Hey, my name is Christopher Saunders, and this is the Connecticut Sports Talent Show, where we talk all things talent in Connecticut. And tonight's show, I'm pleased to have a returning guest, and I'm actually not talking to him on the basketball court like I typically am. Now it's baseball season, and he's the head coach of the Holy Cross Crusaders, Matt Smolley. Coach, I appreciate you coming on.
Chris, thanks for having me.
Coach, I know the season has started out pretty well for you guys. I think you mentioned 3-1. Your most recent loss, or only loss rather, was against Brookfield, a very competitive game. Came down, only lost by I think a run if I remember right. But just kind of give me some of your takeaways from now the first four games of the season.
I mean, we're 3-1. I think we're playing well early. Seeing some kids in some different positions, which is good to start out, moving some kids around, getting some different lineups. We had a good 3-0 start, and then we went to Brookfield yesterday. Played a very good Brookfield team. Ended up losing 4-3, but I think we, as a team, played a complete game. I saw a lot of good things that I'm looking forward to improving on, and then obviously some things that we need to improve on, from the mental standpoint, the physical standpoint, just things that you expect to see in the early season that unfortunately cost us the game yesterday. But I thought we played really well. We never gave up. Our kids battled to the last inning, so I was proud of them.
When the season was just about to begin, right? Typically, I know coaches say, "Okay, I'm comfortable with doing this, but not that." For example, I'm comfortable with how my team has looked as far as in the preseason games, et cetera. Just to kind of get the bats going. But the arms, I'm concerned with because we're not commanding the zone. For you, coach, coming into this season, what did you feel like you felt very comfortable, and have you stayed with that now 4 games in? Has that become a true thing?
Yeah, I think this year and then my 2 years prior, one of the main things I did is kind of stay on track with the kids who I have planned to pitch that specific game. And then also keep an eye on their pitch counts and let them progress from early in the year, to mid-season to when we want them to be at their best when we get to our league tournament, state tournament time. I think that our coaching staff has done a really good job of that the last couple of years and really getting our guys to peak in middle to late May rather than peaking in the beginning of April. And I think that that's benefited us the last 2 years.
How difficult is it, coach? And I'm sure it is for, I mean, we're only a couple games in, and I had many, many coaches on for baseball that were telling me as far as, try not to push the arms, right? You don't want the
Yeah,
first outing to be 100 plus pitches. You want
right.
to ease these kids in. I saw one pitcher who threw, and I'm not going to name the school, but I saw a tweet by it. The young man threw 107 pitches, and his velocity dropped. I think after the 80th or 90th pitch, I have to go back and look. The person was very articulate with their stats,
Right.
but his velocity dropped. And I think it's good to hear, coach, that you want to make sure that you don't push the limits with these young arms and you want to build them up because it's not a sprint. You're right. They're not coming out of the bullpen throwing 100 and that's it. It's a long, long season.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, listen, I just yesterday alone, we had Alec Ash going, and he's our ace. And in the fifth inning, I would have loved to keep him in there, but we got to a point where we were comfortable with where he had got to at 75 pitches. I think he ended up throwing 78, which is more than what we wanted him to throw, but he finished the inning. And then we took him out and we brought someone else in who we felt can continue the game and keep it where it was. And that kid did his job. In regards to the high pitch counts, I mean, every coach has their philosophy. But I mean, me personally, I like to kind of build them up and, like I said, try to get them to peak later on in the season. And then also hopefully allow these kids to pitch beyond Holy Cross and not try to burn their arms out, the 3 or 4 years that I have them with me.
Now, this is the first season that the younger Bassett, the older Bassett played. I remember playing against him back in the day. But the
Yep.
younger Bassett, this is the first year without him, correct, at the catching position?
Well, he was our pitcher. He was our number one pitcher, and he played middle infield, third base for
Oh,
us.
okay. I don't
Yep.
know
Yeah.
why I thought he caught. Maybe I'm thinking of somebody
His,
else. But
his middle brother, Brendan, was a catcher.
oh, there's multiple. Wow, I did not know that. I completely forgot about that.
Yeah. Tim's the oldest one, and then CJ, I
Mhm.
want to say was in the mid 2010s, and
Mhm.
then Logan, who graduated last year and is currently playing at St. Anselm.
And how is he doing so far since we're on him? Has he been playing well or has he pitched at all this season for him?
As pitched, I think he has a couple outings. And I did see that he threw well in his outings. I think obviously him being a freshman, being young on a very experienced Division II team, I think he's going to have to earn some of his innings. But I think I can confidently say he will do that moving forward.
And speaking of players who I know this player is on your team because I just did his football games, the quarterback, Drew Coet.
Yeah,
Talk to me because he to see his growth on the football on the gridiron is one thing. I mean, I saw drastic changes from his first year, last year, and then obviously what he did this season. What have you seen from the young man? Because I remember when I asked you as far as kind of what is he like? You mentioned how he has ice in his veins. He doesn't feel pressure. He's got that, as my former broadcast partner up in Torrington usually said for the kids who had this, they just have that it factor.
right. Yeah, Drew obviously had a huge progression in his football sophomore season from his freshman season. And right now he has started second base for us the first 4 games. And to be honest, he's kind of like a quarterback on the field for us. He's always telling kids where to go. If there's a bunt situation, he's making sure everyone's aware of their responsibility. I mean, just yesterday he went to our pitcher during a tough couple batters and kind of calmed him down, doing things that usually the veteran kids are doing. So I think that his success on the football field is going to allow him to have success on the baseball field as well.
Now, kind of just looking at the overall complexion of the team, and I know for a fact that Holy Cross has, and I know there's a lot of other positions that have been very good for them over the last couple of years, as you would know. But I feel like pitching is so important when it comes to playing baseball. I mean, obviously, you need to have a stalwart catcher who's being able to call the pitches and such, but having pitching, especially deep, I mean, you've seen it over the last many years. I mean, look at East Catholic. Mazzucato was able to do his thing, and the
Right.
rest is history. So, as the pitching has kind of gone through this season so far, not to say that, oh, we're at championship level. That's way too early. But do you feel like the pitching is starting to slowly get to that level that you're comfortable with right now?
Oh yeah, I mean it's definitely a long season, and uh, we have I would 16 more games until they really start counting. So we have some time to get our kids where they need to be. I like the position where we are right now with Alec Ash, Logan Brown, sophomore Aiden Bazalian, another sophomore Carson Donovan, a couple juniors that have fit in there well and through some solid innings for us. So again, it's like you want to get to that point at the end of the season where you're comfortable with your 2 guys, and then also are comfortable with one of those other guys who has had success throughout the season that you can kind of count on as a closer, which kind of Logan Brown did for us last year as a sophomore. We had Logan Bissett and Alec Ash as our 1-2 punch, and then Logan Brown, who was really our number 3 throughout the season. Once we got to tournament time, we kind of became a two-man rotation with Logan out of the bullpen. And, I think that was huge for us in the MVL tournament. And again, in the first couple games of the state tournament as well. And I hope that we kind of have that same fit this year. Now, Alec Ash is our 1, Logan Brown is our 2, and a couple of those younger kids may be vying for that 3rd spot and then that saving position as we get towards the later parts of May.
Now, looking at the offensive side, beyond the fact of just pitching, being able to steal bases and force teams to make plays, and obviously making sure that you get the outs required and not giving teams extra outs.
Yep.
Thus far, and I know the conditions have been kind of wonky. It's been chilly, rainy, cold, and etc. How would you? I don't want to say great, but how would you say thus far the Crusaders are doing in terms of the base running and just making sure they make the proper plays and such defensively?
Well, I think those are some of the things that come with playing games. Unfortunately, in Connecticut, we don't really have a lot of opportunity to practice with our kids before our first game. So there's so much to get in to prepare your team to play that usually your first couple games, you're seeing some of those mental base running mistakes that you kind of jot down and work on as practices come throughout the season. We had a couple yesterday, but it's natural. You're going to expect kids to at times miss signs or, kind of get caught between bases on a hard ground ball. those are things that happen in their teaching moments. And yesterday was a perfect example. We had a kid get stuck between second and third on a hard hit ground ball that kind of took us out of an inning. But that's a teaching moment, and you can't get down on the kid because he's trying to make something happen, and you have to teach it and hope that he doesn't make that same mistake again moving forward in another big spot.
Is there a player that has surprised or maybe has exceeded expectations what you guys felt like coming into this season? I know it's only a couple of games in, so that's probably a difficult question. But is there anybody that's jumping out to you so far?
Individually, no, but I would say that our lineup that we've kind of gone with the last couple games, I've been very pleased with how we're hitting the ball. Our kids are kind of staying within themselves, and they're having quality at bats. We're driving the ball up the middle of the field, and to be honest, the bottom part of our order, 6, 7, 8, 9, some of our younger kids have really been hitting the ball well early on in the season, which I like to see. So I'm very pleased with that, and I hope that we can continue to kind of grow on that and continue to have the success that we've had so far this season.
And that's good to hear, Coach, that you're getting production, I think, from the bottom of the lineup. Because in a lot of ways, when you enter the NVL tournament, as you know, state tournament, time, etc. The bottom of the order typically, I've always believed, especially broadcasting games, if you have a good bottom of the order, it not only relieves pressure from the top of the order, but also gives more opportunities where you get to a bullpen, like you mentioned. You mentioned some studs early on, and then obviously from last year when you went to Brown. You
Mm-hmm.
know, teams don't have like in the major leagues 8, 9 pitchers that they can go to. So
Right.
I think if the bottom of the lineup can do damage, that really could shorten games. What says you?
Yeah, I agree, and our kids they're 6, 7, 8, 9. They're having quality at bats. We're asking them to lay bunts down and move people over, and they're doing those things, and they're also driving the ball to the opposite field, which is good to see early on in the season. And they're hitting the ball and getting the ball into the gaps. So some of the things that not that you don't expect from those kids, but you're kind of leaning on your 2, 3, 4 hitters to do those things, and our 7, 8, 9 hitters are doing them. So if we can have both of those groups combined, I mean, I see us having the ability to score some runs moving forward.
Now, as we look at the NVL, and you and I were going back and forth, and the NVL is very deep as far as talented teams. And when you think about over the last couple of years, I mean, St. Paul won it last year. You guys have had opportunities, and so on and so forth. And I typically don't hear about the NVL when it comes to really many sports, which is strange. I don't understand why, because there's so much talent. And I know the FCAC and others kind of take the top headlines, but I feel like the NVL deserves some respect when it comes to baseball and softball too. There's a lot of talented kids, and there's some teams that can Seymour, just to name one of many, that can
Yep.
really do damage.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at our league from a baseball standpoint, we've had a lot of success, going back, many years. And just in the years that I've been a head coach, you see usually 8 to 10 teams from our league making the CIAC tournament, and not only making it, but winning games and having success. St. Paul, winning a state championship last year. Coach Boehner and Woodland playing for a state championship against a very good Joel Barlow team last year. Oxford making it to the semifinal, who beat us in the second round. Seymour, Watertown, Wolcott, Naugatuck. I mean, you can name all 8 teams who play in our league tournament, and all 8 of them are probably going to have some success in the CIAC tournament. So yeah, sometimes the NVL gets a bad rap, but I think in regards to baseball, I think that we can compete with the best of them.
I think of the NVL tournament kind of like I do, the SEC, for basketball, right? Because I feel like whoever comes out of that typically, although this season wasn't really a factor, but they have success. They'll make it to the Elite Eight, Final Four, etc. I feel like the NVL tournament is like that because, like you said, any of those 8 teams can win it. It's not like, all right, this team's going to win just because they have this. Well, no, because if you look at the other 7 teams, they almost have that same exact formula that the one team has. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the last 2 years, I think the 8 teams that got into the NVL tournament, obviously you have your favorites, but once you start playing, I mean, any of those 8 teams, probably have beaten one another throughout the season, with the exception of St. Paul last year, who was undefeated going into the NVL tournament. but everyone plays one another. There's a lot of good games, a lot of splits between the good teams, and you get to the MVL tournament, and you say to yourself, it's anyone's game. You put your best pitcher on the mound or your number 2 on the mound, depending on what game it is,
Mhm.
and for the best. You hope you can manufacture some runs and play solid defense and kind of keep your pitch count low with your top 2 guys so they can go deep into games. And it's really anyone's tournament. So, I mean, we're gonna kind of have that same attitude this year.
No, I agree with that 100%, coach, because when you think about it, baseball is one of the few sports I believe where anybody can win on any given day, just because I'm thinking of the pros and whatever. But as far as, I mean, you had Woodland who got no hit, I think, right, against St. Paul in the regular season. And
Yep.
then come the tournament time, Woodland pulled a switch. And
Yep.
then they were able to defeat, with the help of Belcher, who was on
Yeah.
the mound, I think late in the game, if I recall. I could be wrong. But either way, Woodland won that game. So that's the beauty of baseball, man.
Yeah. I was at that game, and we had at that point um, already solidified our spot in the NBL championship. So we went to that game, obviously knowing that we were going to face the winner. And that was a great game. I think I want to say the Giambra kid maybe started for Woodland, and then Belcher came in. But they Woodland had a couple big hits early to kind of put them up. I think a home run early in the first or second inning, and St. Paul was scrappy and fought back, and then Belcher came in late in the game and kind of did what he does best and kind of shut them down, and they were able to get the victory. Unfortunately, I'm sure that Coach Boehner would have liked to start Belcher in the MVL championship, but you get into one of those games and you got to win it no matter what. And I think that that's what his mindset was, that night.
I mean, I forgot who the manager was in terms of Major League Baseball, but he said that you can't worry about tomorrow if today's not guaranteed, right? Or
Right.
something like that. Or no, tomorrow's not guaranteed if today is not, or something. He said it basically better than I can. But basically, you have to worry about today's game because you may not have the opportunity tomorrow to play. Same thing for the CIC playoff. You can't
Yeah.
predict like, oh, I want to throw Ash, right? And then I'm going to bring him back 4 days. Like you can't do that. You just can't.
No, you never know who you're going to face. Usually by the time the NBL tournament, CIAC tournament comes, everyone has that good number 1. So even if they're a 10-10, 12-8, 13-17, a lot of those 12 or 13 wins probably came from that one kid. So you can face a really good player and get shut down in round 1. And, sometimes those things happen. And like you said, that's the game of baseball. Anyone can win on any given day.
Well, it's almost like what was it? This was maybe 5 years ago. I could be wrong, but I think it was the number 2 seed. I think it was Foreign, right? That won the whole thing as a 32 seed, or was it Law? It was one of those two.
Yeah, I vaguely remember there being a very low seed who kind of went on a real good run. And I watched them play. I mean, they were a very good baseball team. I don't remember exactly who it was. But I want to say it was 2017, 2018 time. And I think actually Holy Cross was playing at Palmer, and they might have been after us. And when Coach Phelan won the state championship in 2017, and we were saying like this is a 25 or a 30 seed team, and they were playing really good baseball, and they ended up winning it.
And if I remember right, too, I think they beat Watertown when Watertown had Cam Guerrera. And they had some dudes in that on the, in the lineup, but Guerrera was the head one because of how talented, obviously, he's playing the minor leagues right now. But I remember seeing that and I'm like, it's like you can't, I've always said this when it comes to like the college football playoff, more often than not, the one or the two is going to win the whole thing, even with
Yep.
the expanded playoffs. It's crazy. But in baseball, you could see a number 5 seed or number 8 seed that's coming into the, although they're not seeded, but
Yep.
still, that team has a shot. In terms of, high school baseball, you have a 32 winning the whole thing. Now, it doesn't happen every time, but it's just one of those things that I feel like I like seeing upsets. It's cool, and the excitement that the kids have is just a whole nother level.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, for me, the best thing about baseball is being able to either play on a team or coach a team that's hot. There's nothing better when you know that you're going to play and your team is, hitting the ball and you're playing good defense and your strikeout to walk ratio is good and you're pitching well. and you know you have a shot to win every day, and you're winning 5, 6, 7, 8 games in a row. In my opinion, there's nothing better, than a hot streak in baseball. And sometimes teams, hit that at the right time. We were fortunate enough the last couple of years, I think, kind of finish our regular season strong going into the MVL tournament, and that kind of propelled us the last couple of years. So it's all about when you're playing your best baseball.
Coach, I really, look forward to being able to follow the Holy Cross Crusaders and the rest of the NVL through the remainder of the baseball season. But we just about run out of time. I really appreciate you coming on. Best of luck, and hopefully, maybe I can get you back on before the NVL tournament.
Sounds good, Chris. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
No problem. Anytime. I'll wrap things up here on the CT Sports Talent Show. So until next time, stay safe. Where CT stands for Connecticut Talent, I'm Jerry. Find them all. Enjoy the rest of your day, everybody, and be well.